Hello everybody, welcome to Monster Monday pre-show. I am DM Gallibond, and you are listening to Pipe Dream Hits. All this month, our music on our live streams and videos is brought to us by Pipe Dream Hits. Music by streamers for streamers. Use Pipe Dream Hits in your YouTube videos, your Twitch live streams, your YouTube live streams, your TikTok videos, Instagram Reels, whatever the cool kids are doing with music and video these days, and you'll never get a copyright strike against you. Go check them out at pipedreamhits.com. Also, if you're into tabletop games, and if you're watching this video, chances are you are, go check out Mo over at thetabletopbellhop.com. Mo is the OG when it comes to all things tabletop. He has everything that you could possibly want for your tabletop gaming needs. From card games, party games, board games, strategy games, you name it, he's got it. And a whole galaxy of people making content about it. So go check him out, tabletopbellhop.com. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Alright everybody, we're gonna go ahead and bring the music down to a dull roar. Leave just a little bit of music in the background. And welcome everybody to Monster Monday. I am DM Gallibond. This is August 30th, 2021, and tonight on Monster Monday, we are going to be looking at the history of the Sphinx. Now, yesterday in my Sunday game, somebody mentioned, hey, have you done something on the Displacer Beast? And I couldn't remember at the moment whether I had, but so it turns out if you go to the archives on YouTube, yes, there is a video on the Displacer Beast from a few months ago. So we are doing a brand new monster tonight, the Sphinx. And we're going to talk about its history in the game from the time it was first introduced all the way up to the present day. How, tactics for fighting against it, how you can use it in encounters, placement in your campaigns, roles for the monster, and also some reskinning options. So without further ado, let's go ahead and look at the Sphinx. Now, obviously, the Sphinx is a monster that came to D&D out of real-world technology, and it first appeared in the basic edition of the game, all the way back in the Rules Cyclopedia. This was the version of D&D that was around before AD&D. So, a Sphinx is a large winged creature with a lion's body and a human's face. And there can be male and female. That's what they told us in Basic D&D. Now, by the time we got to AD&D or First Edition, there were several additional variations on the Sphinx. There's the Gynosphinx, which is a ram-headed creature that's likely to be found in wooded areas. The Androsphinx is the traditional Sphinx with a male human head and torso. The Gynosphinx is the traditional Sphinx with the female human head and torso. And then the Hyracosphinx is a hawk-headed monster that is evil and rapacious. And that's what we learned from First Edition. Now, Second Edition, what we learn is Androsphinxes are huge winged mythological creatures with the bodies of male lions and man-like facial features. Gynosphinxes have the bodies of winged lions, but they have the heads of rams. The Gynosphinx is the female counterpart of the Androsphinx, having a winged lion's body and human-like facial features. And Hyracosphinxes are the only evil members of their breed. They have the bodies of lions, but the wings and head of hawks. So there are some very different kind of Sphinxes in the older editions of D&D, and those kind of Sphinxes can be fun to pull into a modern game. Reskin it as something, or give it the Sphinx stat block and just give it the appearance of the older creature. Alright, now we talk about the descriptions from the oldest versions of D&D to the newest. We talk about the lore of the monster from the newest versions to the oldest. So looking at 5th edition, the current edition of the game, in Sphinx Lore, we learn that Sphinxes are divine guardians. They test the worth of those who seek the treasures of the gods, whether forgotten secrets or mighty spells, artifacts or magical gateways. Creatures that choose to face a Sphinx's test are bound to that test unto death, and only those worthy will survive it. The rest the Sphinx destroys. Now in 4th edition, we learn that Sphinxes are created by rare and powerful rituals that bind angelic spirits into the bodies of celestial lions. So this is the origin story in 4th edition, where we learn why the Sphinx looks like it does. So it's got the spirit of an angel fused into the body of a celestial lion. And then from 3rd edition, we learn Gynosphinxes are often willing to bargain for treasure or service. They constantly seek out new intellectual challenges. Riddles, puzzles, and other such tests delight them to no end. They find Gynosphinxes, which are the ram-headed versions, and Hyracosphinxes, the hawk-headed versions, detestable. So, that is what we learn about lore. And then another little tidbit that we learn is that the Gynosphinx is the only female Sphinx. And in terms of the breeding habits, if a Gynosphinx and an Androsphinx mate, then if there's any offspring, equal chance that it could be an Androsphinx or a Gynosphinx. If a Gynosphinx mates with either a Gynosphinx or a Hyracosphinx, then the offspring is always either the Cryosphinx or the Heracossphinx, and the offspring is always male. So that is, but I couldn't find any reason why, or what the story behind all that was. So that's up for you to decide at your table. All right, in 5th edition, we know that all creatures have a creature type, and for the Sphinx, it is a monstrosity. This here, by the way, anyway, I have been a little bit remiss in talking about the pictures. This image here is the Androsphinx from 2nd edition, the Monsters Manual. This is the 5th edition Gynosphinx. So very, you notice the facial features of this are very leonine, and there's hardly any kind of human features to the face by the time we get to 5th edition. 4th edition, this is something called the Sphinx Mystery, a type of Sphinx called the Sphinx Mystery, which we will talk about later on. And it's feminine with vaguely humanoid hair, but otherwise a very feline face and body. So monstrosities are monsters in the strictest sense, creatures that are not ordinary, not natural, and almost never benign. The Sphinx, well, it's a guardian, and so if you go up and challenge a guardian, it's not going to be pleasant, but most of them are in fact either good or neutral in alignment. So depending on who you are and why you are approaching the guardian, they're not necessarily going to be evil, but if you're challenging their guardianship, they are not going to be benevolent, that's for sure. All right, now we are going to go and look at the mechanical features of the Sphinx. And this means going all the way back to, like I said, original D&D or basic D&D, and looking at the Sphinx from the Rules Cyclopedia. So the Sphinx had an armor class of 0, had 12 hit dice with 5 asterisks. Now, all those asterisks mean that it fights as a creature of a hit die higher. So it's a 12 hit dice monster, but it fights as a 17 hit die monster. It has a movement of 60 feet in combat on the ground, a flying speed of 120 feet in the air, attacks with 2 claws and a bite, 3d6 for each of its claws, 2d8 for the bite, saves as a 24th level fighter. So that is that's pretty makes it pretty tough. Both male and female Sphinxes are very intelligent spellcasters, and note one of the differences they have in this edition is that the females, or the Gynosphinx, are 12th level cleric spellcasters, and the males are 12th level magic user casters. Their magic is so powerful that all saving throws against their spells are made with a -4 penalty. Combat, a Sphinx can attack with claws and bite, or spells, but its most feared attack is the roar. It can use the roar twice per day. Each victim within 120 feet makes a saving throw versus spells -4, or has to flee in fear for anywhere from 10 to 60 minutes. And each victim within 60 feet must check for fear, and must also make a saving throw versus paralysis or be stunned for 1 to 6 rounds. And each victim within 10 feet must check for the fear and stun effect, also takes 66 points of damage, and is deafened for 1d10 turns, so 10 to 100 minutes, and they are allowed no saving throw. Sphinxes are immune to all first, second, third level spells and to non-magical weapons. And then, so that is why they are so tough, is because they have all these immunities and all these special attacks. All right, now in first edition, we get the 4 different types, and the Andro and Gynosphinx are the 2 toughest, with a -2 armor class for the Androsphinx, -1 armor class for the Gynosphinx, a 0 armor class for the Cryosphinx, and a 1 armor class for the Heracosphinx. They are 12, anywhere from 12 to 8 hit die monsters, and now it says here they inhabit only warm climates, dissimilar with regards to species characteristics, and talks a little bit about. Now notice here they've just gone and reversed themselves. Remember how in Basic D&D it said that the male Sphinx or the Androsphinx was a magic user? Well, now it says that the Androsphinx has the ability to use clerical spells as if it were a 6th level human cleric, and they usually shun the company of Gynosphinxes, for they resent the female's greater intelligence and neutral alignment. And it can do that roar 3 times per day. It must be aroused and angry to use the first, very angry to roar again, and infuriated to cut loose of the third. And then each roar has an increasingly more powerful effect, unlike the first, or unlike the basic edition. Then we have the Cryosphinx, the ram-headed creature. Wooded areas, they prize wealth, will seek to extort passers-by safe passage for a hefty bribe, and they will attack with their 4 paws and a great butt with their horned head. They lust after Gynosphinxes, but the latter find them detestable. Now, the Gynosphinx, the female, counterpart of the Androsphinx, knowledgeable and wise, neutral and prized gems and similar wealth. They will help humans if they are paid, although they will sometimes accept payment in the form of riddles, poetry, prose, knowledge, or the location of an Androsphinx. Payment is not made, the Sphinx will not hesitate to devour the offender. And they're able to use the following spells once per day: detect magic, read magic. They can use each of the symbols once per week, and Gynosphinxes speak all the language known to the males of their kind. And then there's the Heracosphinx, is evil and rapacious, found in hilly regions, prey on warm-blooded creatures, by preference humans being high on the list of favorite meals. Attack with 4 paws and beak each melee round. They highly value treasure. It is not known that, or it is not unknown for Heracosphinxes to serve as steeds for certain evil and powerful creatures. So there's a potential that you could have a Heracosphinx steed, but you would have to be evil in order to do so. Now, in second edition, we learn a little bit more, and notice here the intelligence levels of the 4 different types. The Heracosphinx, the hawk-headed one, is kind of a low intelligence, 5 to 7. So probably doesn't have a whole lot of speech. Maybe speech on the order of something like a parrot or a mynah bird, something like that, which would be kind of interesting if you wanted to RP that as a DM. The Cryosphinx is a little bit smarter, average 9 to 10, so about like your basic fighter or barbarian. Androsphinx, very intelligent, 15 to 16, but then the Gynosphinx has the genius intelligence. It's like that old Grateful Dead song. They said, women are smarter, right? So, all right. So the Androsphinx is the most physically powerful and has that bellowing roar up to 3 times a day. And all creatures within 360 yards must roll successful saving throws versus wand or flee in panic for 30 minutes. It can roar louder, causing all creatures within 200 yards. So the second roar will cause creatures within 200 yards to roll successful saving throws of petrification or be paralyzed with fright for 1d4 rounds. And then on the third roar, all creatures within 240 yards must successfully roll saving throws versus spells or lose 2d4 points of strength for 2d4 rounds. And in addition to the weakness effects, any creature within 30 yards is knocked over unless it is 8 feet tall or larger. Creatures knocked over suffer 2d8 points of damage and must roll successful saving throw versus breath weapon to avoid being stunned for 2d6 rounds. So they, they're pretty powerful. I don't think we learn a whole lot more about the tactics of the monsters in here. And Cryosphinxes are obviously just further mutations of the already mysterious Sphinx form. Their ability to speak with animals seems to be an evolutionary necessity. They're particularly fond of warm, wooded areas, often bordering on the desert lands preferred by Gynosphinxes. And then the Gynosphinxes, they're knowledgeable, clever, and wise. Ecology, they own the dubious distinction of being the only female Sphinx. And then this is where we find out about what happens with offspring. And then the Hyracosphinx, the only evil members of their breed. They do not cast spells. They make up for the weakness with tenacious evil and viciousness. They live in hilly regions, exclusively dwelling in caves overlooking the nearby deserts. Because that's where the Gynosphinxes are, is in the desert. Alright, so now we go to 3rd edition. And in 3rd edition, they're enigmatic creatures, great feathery wings, and leonine bodies. A typical Sphinx is about 10 feet long, weighs about 800 pounds. And now notice in 3rd edition, they speak Sphinx, Common, and Draconic. I suppose because if it's a mystical creature and it flies, it must speak Draconic, right? Okay. The Androsphinx is the large magical creature, armor class 22. Remember, 3rd edition is where they flipped the armor class, so now the higher the armor class, the better. And does claw bite, or actually 2 claws. It doesn't make a bite attack. 2d4 plus 7 for each claw. And then the Cryosphinx is is armor class 20. So that is the ram-headed one, and it has a gore attack. Which, if you think about a ram's horns, I don't know. Gore attack with a ram's horns, that seems more like something a bull's horns would do, because the ram's horns are usually like curved down, and you think of like just that be a heavy bludgeoning type of thing. So instead of goring, like putting a horn through you. Alright, so then there's the Gynosphinx. The Gynosphinx is armor class 21. And 2 claws for the melee attacks. And the... Okay, so... Yeah, here's what I wanted to go to. I wanted to talk about the spell casting of the Androsphinx and the Gynosphinx. In 3rd edition, they always give us, for spellcasting monsters, a suggested complement of spells and how many spells they have available. So 5 cantrips, 5 first level, 5 second level, 4 third level spells. And then here are and they typically use clerical spells, the 3rd edition Androsphinx. And then the Gynosphinx has spell-like abilities. So clairaudience, clairvoyance, detect magic, read magic, see invisibility 3 times a day, and then once per day, comprehend languages, locate objects, dispel magic, remove curse, and legend lore. And then once per week, a Gynosphinx can create a symbol of death, symbol of fear, symbol of insanity, symbol of pain, symbol of persuasion, symbol of sleep, and symbol of stunning, as per the spells. And gives a DC for the save, and each symbol remains maximum of 1 week once scribed. Alright, and then we have the Sphinx, which is described but not pictured. Bigger than a horse, has a tawny lion body, great falcon wings. And they have the armor class of 19. They bite and they claw. So they bite with their falcon-like beak and claw with their talons. Alright, so now we come to 4th edition. And in 4th edition, we actually pare down the number of sphinxes we have. A lot of times, if you have watched the series, you'll know that when we get to 4th edition just likes to come up with all kinds of different riffs and variations on a monster. Well, 4th edition for the Sphinx, they seem to cut that down, at least among the sources that I have. I haven't seen any but 2. In the original 4th edition monster manual, we get the plain vanilla Sphinx, which is a level 16 elite soldier. Armor class 35, 304 hit points. Has the claw attack, the pounce attack, the frightful roar, second wind ability, and the Sphinx's challenge. And it poses a challenge out of combat. And if the challenged creatures refuse to answer or fail to answer correctly, the Sphinx gains the following benefit until the end of the encounter: 1 extra action point, an extra use of a second wind, +2 bonus to all attack rolls, and +2 bonus to all defenses. So that's that's an interesting thing that you can do. If you want to homebrew rules for a Sphinx in your 5th edition game, you can borrow something like that and say, okay, the Sphinx is going to require you to answer a question, and if you either refuse or you fail to answer correctly, it actually makes it easier for it to kill and eat you if it comes to a combat. Alright, then in the Monster Manual 2 from 4th edition, we have the Sphinx Mystery. And the Sphinx Mystery seems to be kind of like the Gynosphinx, but notice that it's actually a bit tougher than the normal Sphinx. So it's a large immortal magical beast, level 19 brute, 224 hit points, armor class 31. So I guess actually hit points and armor class wise it's not quite as tough, but it's a higher level monster. So let's see. Ancient Claws, Bite of Ages, Riddle Me This. So compels the target to contemplate a riddle. The target is dazed until the end of the encounter or until it answers the riddle. Determine the answer. A creature must spend a minor action and succeed at a DC 25 history check. Target that does not attempt to answer the riddle during its turn takes 2d8 psychic damage at the end of its turn. An ally can provide the answer and end the effect. If an ally ends the effect, the target still takes the 2d8 psychic damage. So Corrective Mauling. Recharges when an enemy fails the history check to riddle me this. A great roar. So it will pose a riddle and then sort of laugh at you while you take psychic damage while you're trying to figure out the answer to the riddle. And yeah, these are celestial, angelic, good creatures, right? Right? Maybe? Actually, in this edition, they're unaligned. So in other editions, that would be neutral. All right. Now, in 5th edition, we are going to talk about sphinxes in the places where you find them, because sphinxes have been part of some of the best beloved modules throughout the history of D&D. They come in and they fulfill special roles within those modules. And in 5th edition, some of those modules have been updated and reprinted by Wizards of the Coast from the back catalog of old TSR adventures. So the first one we come to is the Enhanced Sphinx. And the Enhanced Sphinx has an armor class of 17, 136 hit points. And it's inscrutable, so it's immune to any effect that would sense emotions or read its thoughts. Why? Because it's asking you riddles. You can't just read its mind and tell it what the answer to its riddle is. Its weapon attacks, so its natural claws and everything, are considered magical. It's a 9th level spellcaster, and it casts wizard spells, so it has cantrips and then spell levels up to 5th level. It makes 2 claw attacks, and it has legendary actions. So while it is a CR 11 monster, those legendary actions make it a little bit tougher, as do the spellcasting. So it's a little bit harder than your average CR 11 monster. And where does this come from? Well, this comes from the Lost Library of Qualish, which is a adventure from 5th edition that actually goes back and pulls bits and pieces out of classic adventures. And this one is from the Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. And basically, Expedition of the Barrier Peaks is where Gary Gygax hypothesized that an alien spaceship crashed into the world of Greyhawk, and it caused all kinds of localized craziness, and the adventurers had to go and investigate that. And Qualish was a wizard that tried to turn that place into a laboratory, and all sorts of mayhem ensued. So there is a Sphinx that serves as a guardian to protect the approach to what is left of this crashed spaceship. So that's where you find the Enhanced Sphinx in that adventure. And then we come to the Sphinx of Judgment. The Sphinx of Judgment is a creature that comes to 5th edition out of the lore of Magic the Gathering, because the Sphinx of Judgment comes to us from the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. And the Sphinx of Judgment is part of the Azoria Senate, so they act as judges within the Azoria Senate. The Azoria Senate passes the laws, enforces the laws, interprets the laws, those types of things. Basically functions as the government and the police force and everything like that. And the Sphinxes are part of the judgment column of the Azoria Senate. There's like 3 columns. One is creating the laws, one is enforcing the laws, one is the courts that interpret the laws. So it would be part of the court column, where it sits in judgment of people that have been accused of wrongdoing. And so they wield hieromancy, which is the power of law magic, with the force of a judge's gavel to imprison criminals and compel truth from them. Sphinx of Judgment is always a Gynosphinx, as described in a monster manual, and then it swaps out the normal spellcasting ability of the Gynosphinx for these particular spells, which are all Azoria Senate spells. And then there's yet another type of Sphinx that comes to us through Magic the Gathering into 5th edition, and this comes in the Mythic Odysseys of Theros. So it originates with the Theros block, or the Theros expansions from Magic the Gathering, and there are Sphinxes that are creatures in there, but there's also at least one named Sphinx that winds up coming into D&D, at least by reference, and that is the wise and ancient Androsphinx Medomai. And Medomai has appeared in Meletis during moments of historical import, such as religious ceremonies, coronations, and the onset of wars. For decades, he's brought his cryptic knowledge of future events to the people, but since his predictions tend to be dire, his arrival is generally viewed as a bad omen. And then it gives you some sample riddles that you can throw out there if you want to use those in your campaign. All right, but outside of those special sources and references where Sphinxes come in from older editions, Sphinxes do appear in the Monster Manual, and we learn about them in the section on Sphinxes. In a sacred isolation, a Sphinx guards the secrets and treasures of the gods. As the colony regards each new party that comes before it, the bones of supplicants and quest seekers that fail to pass its tests lie scattered around its lair. They're divine guardians. They test the worth of those. Some Sphinxes are high priests of the gods that create them, but most are simply embodied spirits brought into the mortal realm by devout prayer or direct intervention. And the secrets and treasures of Sphinx guards remain under divine protection, so when a creature fails a Sphinx's test, the path to the object or knowledge it guards vanishes. Even if a Sphinx is attacked and defeated, a quester will still fail to gain the secret it sought, and will make an enemy of the god that placed the Sphinx as a guardian. This is something important to remember as a DM. If you are going to if you're going to place Sphinxes in your campaign as a divine guardian, always have somebody, a well-meaning NPC, a friend of the party, or somebody who just does a religion check and gets a good result, remind them that if they go try to challenge the Sphinx and they can't pass the test and they decide they're just going to kill the Sphinx, number one, they might succeed, but they're not going to find what they're looking for if they do that. And number two, it's going to piss off the god that put the Sphinx there. So if they are a follower of said god, you're probably not a good idea to go doing that, because then your deity is going to be pissed off at you. And if you do have some crazy cleric that goes and does that, well, then as a DM, you just start to have all sorts of fun with that PC, because it did something that, is pretty dumb. All right. So the Sphinx, they're extraplanar beings. Mortals who encounter Sphinxes do so most often in ancient tombs and ruins, but some of them can access extraplanar realms. And then fallen Sphinxes, through weariness of age, regret at the slaughter of innocents, or dreams of worship by supplicants. Some of them break free of their divine command, and even if a Sphinx's alignment and loyalties drift in this way, it never leaves the place it guards or grants its secrets to any except creatures it deems worthy. So, what could that mean? That could possibly mean that its idea of who a worthy supplicant is changes. And instead of revealing the secrets to those that are aligned with the deity that put it there, it might decide, this god's really kind of a jerk. So I'm gonna, the people that wanna mess around this god and cause this god trouble, those are the people I'm gonna reveal the secrets to. So, adamant. I pity the party that Sphinx they will succeed. Okay. Well, I guess we know who is getting disadvantaged in the next Sunday game. All right. Okay, so now let's take a look at the individual run-of-the-mill garden variety Sphinxes from 5th edition. The Androsphinx and the Gynosphinx. Now, the Androsphinx is a CR 17 monster. Armor class 17, 199 hit points, 40 foot movement, and 60 feet flight speed. They have the inscrutable feature, magical, or its attacks are magical, and the Androsphinx has the following cleric spells prepared. So it casts as a 12th level spellcaster, so it casts up to 6th level spells. It attacks with its claws. It has the 3 times a day roar. The roar is loud, or each time it roars, the effect is louder and is different. So on the first roar, each creature within 500 feet has to make the saving throw every time it roars. So each creature that fails a DC 18 Wisdom on the first roar is frightened for 1 minute. On the second roar, each creature that fails a DC 18 Wisdom save is deafened and frightened for a minute. And then on the third roar, each creature that fails a DC 18 Constitution check takes 8d10 thunder damage and is knocked prone. So yeah, those roars have successively worse effects, just as in the previous editions of the game. So then it also gets legendary actions. It can make a claw attack. It can teleport, so it can just start moving all around the battlefield, or it can cast a spell. The teleport will use 2 of its actions, and casting a spell will use up all 3 of its legendary actions during the round. And then the Gynosphinx is a CR 11 monster. So same armor class 17, but slightly fewer hit points, and has the inscrutable feature, magic weapons feature, spellcaster. But note here, it's a 9th level spellcaster, and it casts wizard spells. So cantrips up through 5th level, multi-attack, claws, and the legendary actions. The claw, the teleport, and the cast a spell. Alright, so that is the mechanical side of the Sphinx. And we are now going to go back over here to the slides. And we are going to talk about how you would use the Androsphinx and the Gynosphinx in encounters. So if we're talking about the Androsphinx, so the CR17 monster, if we want to create a hard or challenging encounter with these creatures for a party of 5 PCs, you can throw those at a party that is level 12 or level 13, and that will be a hard encounter. So this is presuming that you have average characters with average scores and average, magic items and all that kind of stuff. If the party is level 14 to 16, it's a medium encounter. And at level 16, if you want to make it a hard encounter, well, say it's a mated pair of sphinxes, and throw a Gynosphinx onto the field. And then it has to deal with both the clerical spellcasting Androsphinx and the wizard spellcasting Gynosphinx during the fight. And then if the party is level 17 through 20, it's an easy encounter. And if you want to turn that level or turn an encounter into a hard encounter for a level 20 party, throw a second Androsphinx in there. So maybe they're like brothers or cousins or whatever, and they are having a meeting or something, and the party interrupts the meeting, and the Sphinx says, "Okay, now that's going to be bad for you because you interrupted our meeting. We were trying to watch the game, and you came in and annoyed us, and now it's going to be bad for you." All right, so then we have the Gynosphinx, the CR11 Gynosphinx. So how would we create a hard encounter with that CR11 Gynosphinx? If you just have the one Sphinx in the encounter, at level 7 or 8, that's going to be a hard encounter. At level 9 or 10, it would be a medium encounter, and to make it a hard encounter at level 10, throw a Bulette into the encounter along with the Gynosphinx. And then from character level 11 through 15, it would be an easy encounter. And if you want to make it a hard encounter, throw a second Gynosphinx on the field. So now it will be a, pair of sisters or whatever, having their little coffee hour. And you've interrupted that, and oh boy, now it's going to be on like Donkey Kong. They are going to make you wish you hadn't interrupted them. And now, if you're a player in a party that has the fortune or misfortune to have to get into a fight with a Sphinx, here are some tactics and tips that you can use. So, first of all, answer carefully, because the Sphinxes are guardians of divine and ancient secrets. They love to test adventurers with riddles. Success will mean safe passage to brave the traps that await you on your way to the treasure, and failure almost certainly means a deadly fight. And as we learned in the lore, even if you defeat the Sphinx, your path to that treasure that you were seeking is blocked, because the deity is not going to allow you to succeed just because you beat their guardian. Now also beware of spells. Both Androsphinxes and Gynosphinxes cast a wide variety of spells to charm, confuse, and otherwise thwart would-be assailants who want to try to take the secret or treasure they guard by force. And then finally, be on your best manners. If adventurers are of good heart and noble bearing, and if they are nice, Sphinxes can offer boons to aid those whom they deem worthy or honorable. Make a good impression on the Sphinx, and you may find aid instead of a fight in the encounter. So, a Sphinx is one of those monsters that, as a DM, you really need to be prepared for the encounter to go any which way. Have it either turn into a really fun roleplay encounter where the party, shows sufficient humility and defers to the Sphinx as a divine guardian, answers the questions that it asks, and maybe impresses it enough that the Sphinx wants to give it a little help. It can go that way. Or if the party just rolls poorly on trying to figure out what the answers to the riddles are, or they just are having a bad day and they don't think about what they're doing and they escalate situations into a fight, then the Sphinx has a lot of cool abilities that it can turn around and use and throw against the party. And probably one of the most fun things you can do is perhaps when the party arrives, they see the pathway. They might actually see the physical pathway leading to the treasure that they want beyond the Sphinx until they decide to fight it. And they defeat it. And then suddenly, just as if by divine magic, that pathway disappears. And no amount of searching for secret doors or trying to dig through rock or trying to do anything is going to reveal where that path is, because the deity themselves decided, nope, you done screwed up. You are not getting what you came for. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. You can just go home empty-handed. You chose poorly in the test of the Sphinx. Alright, so now if you are using the Sphinx from behind the screen as a DM, you can decide whether you want the Sphinx to be a guardian or a guide or both. Now in classic mythology and in a lot of the ways it was used in old D&D modules, the Sphinx was a guardian of divine secrets or powerful treasures, and that includes the White Plume Mountain module or adventure. It includes that expedition to the peaks of the Borderlands adventure, where the crashed spaceship and all that kind of stuff. That is all where you find the Sphinx as guardian. However, if you look at the Theros block from Magic the Gathering, the Sphinx is cast as either a guide or a philosopher or a teacher. They are great, wise thinkers or oracles or teachers that inhabit distant and remote retreats where supplicants and students alike come seeking wisdom, knowing full well that failure means death. So in your particular game and in your particular situation, you might want to decide whether the Sphinx is going to be the gatekeeper or the guide. And it could in some ways be both. Now, if you just want a Sphinx as a cool monster to fight, you can of course always reach back into the older editions of the game and bring the the skin of the Hyracosphinx or the Cryosphinx into 5th edition and perhaps replace the stat block. Now, of course, those don't have spell casting, so you might substitute some sort of different features for the spell casting or something like that, and then just throw that at your party. And if you okay, yeah, all right. So that is the like I was saying before, the Androsphinx and the Gynosphinx of 5e holds as much potential for a roleplay encounter as for a combat encounter. Now, where are you going to put this Sphinx, put this monster in your campaign? So with lore stating the Sphinx is an immortal being with the soul of a celestial, it's easy to see how they would fit as guardians of some divine knowledge. So maybe your party is on a quest to find a rumored relic of a deity that was lost long ago. Might be in an ancient shrine with a Sphinx guardian. Or maybe the Sphinx itself is the key to the treasure the PCs seek. Perhaps answering its riddle or proving their worth is what causes the Guardian to reveal the special knowledge that turns one of the party members from a normal adventurer into a scion of a faith tradition that is new or returning to the world. Now, if you're in, I've known of several different D&D campaigns where, the theme is like some sort of aftermath of like a celestial war where a lot of the gods fought and some of them maybe even got killed, and a lot of the faith traditions have died in the world, and maybe there's not that much religion in the world, but you have somebody in that kind of world that really wants to play a cleric. Well, maybe part of their character arc is finding a secret knowledge about this god that everybody thought was dead. And a Sphinx can be a great NPC sort of key or guardian that helps to unlock that knowledge for that PC. So you can think about using the Sphinx in that way. So it's not really intended, presuming the character is on a quest they know about and they are actively seeking this knowledge. It's not necessarily going to be a combat encounter, but it still may be a dangerous encounter, because if they wind up falling short and not being a suitable representative, then the Sphinx might be, gosh, sorry, nice try, but your lunch. So, as previously mentioned, classic White Plume Mountain adventure from Tales of the Yawning Portal in 5e features the Sphinx as the first guardian adventurers have to pass to try to reach the legendary treasures a mad wizard has squirreled away inside a deadly, danger-filled dungeon. So, yeah, they do have Sphinxes in D&D that aren't necessarily guardians of divine treasures, but have somehow been summoned by powerful wizards to guard magical treasures. And if you have a Sphinx like that, you could have a lot of fun kind of RPing that. Maybe it's a Sphinx that somehow made a bad bargain and got roped into doing this. Maybe it's a reluctant guardian. It's compelled to ask the riddles, but maybe not very enthusiastic about it. It's compelled to fight the PCs, but again, maybe not very enthusiastic about it, because, I mean, it's immortal. It's not really going to be killed anyway, so even if you destroy its current form, wow, that might be a vacation from this really boring thing I have to do. So, you can have fun with that as a DM as well, thinking about how you would want to use it. All right, and then thinking about how you would reskin a monster. So the Sphinx is an extraplanar celestial monster that usually appears in the natural world Now, there could be several different variations or reskinnings of this guardian type monster, depending on where your PC's adventure. So let's say that the campaign is set in the Feywild. We're going to learn more about that next month when they drop the new source book for 5th edition. And so we're going to see all kinds of stuff that they have for the Feywild in 5e. But let's just say that your campaign is already set in the Feywild. You could reskin a Sphinx as a type of greater Fey. On the other hand, if your party is delving into the Abyss or into the Nine Hells, a creature that resembles but is not quite the same as an Arcanoloth might be reskinned with the stat block of a Sphinx. Now, if you recall, the Arcanoloths are the jackal-headed devils or demons that they love to hoard magical treasure, and they will sometimes act as researchers or answer questions for powerful enough parties, but there's always a price to be paid for that. Well, maybe there's, instead of a jackal-headed, there might be like a lion-headed or puma-headed or something like that monster that fulfills the role of a Sphinx, but on the evil side. And so maybe instead of having the party answer riddles in order to get the secrets, maybe the party has to offer a sufficient sacrifice. Which might be, oh, warrior, let me eat your arm. Why do you need 2 of them? One should be sufficient. Let me eat your arm and I'll tell you what you need to know. Come on, you really want it? You know you really want the answer to this. Just let me eat your arm. I'll leave everything above the elbow. Just let me eat from the elbow down to the fingers. Oh, those fingers look so delicious. Oh, yes. Yes, please let me eat your arm. I'll tell you everything you want to know. Just let me eat the warrior's arm. Come on, magic user. You know he doesn't need that arm. You know you can blow away anything. Artificer, you know you can make an artificial arm for him. Come on. Let me have the warrior's arm. That could be an evil version of a Sphinx. And then if you're adventuring in the elemental planes, you might have Sphinxes that exist, or Sphinx-like creatures that exist alongside the various Djinn that are native to that plane. Yes, all right. Costs an arm and a leg. Exactly. Yes. Yes, adamant. Okay. So, when you go to each of the elemental planes, there are all the Djinn, which are the elemental creatures that we think of as genies, but in D&D lore, each elemental plane has its own version of that. I think in the fire plane, it's the Ifrit, and other types of similar monsters in the earth and the water plane as well. All right, so now we come to look for the questions, and let me go ahead over here and see in the chat room if we have any questions so far. All right, I don't see any so far, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on into the wrap-up, and then I will double-check and see if you guys have any questions on Sphinxes. Okay, I have been DM Gallibond. This has been Monster Monday, all about the Sphinx.
And I normally do 4 streams every week. I will be doing 1 additional stream this week, and 2 of them will be skipping, partly because of the holiday weekend and partly because of other conflicts I have. So, the Walker of Waterdeep will not happen this week, but normally that's Sunday afternoons at 2 p.m. We will be doing the Sword Coast Chronicles this week, which is Thursdays at 8 p.m. Sword Coast Chronicles is our romp through the 5th edition published campaigns. We have a homebrew storyline, but that storyline weaves in and out of the stories of the published 5e campaigns. We're right now in the storyline of Storm King's Thunder. So you can join us on Thursday night to see how they are getting along in the Storm Giant Citadel of Maelstrom. And then on Saturday nights, we do a throwback game that goes all the way back to 2nd edition. We play our Saturday night Greyhawk, and that game also will be on hiatus this week because of a conflict. You can find all the streams simulcast on both Twitch and YouTube, and all of the archives are over on YouTube as well. So if you want to catch up on some of those shows, or catch up on the old Monster Mondays, or any of the other YouTube standalone content that I've created over the years, you can go to the YouTube channel and look for those. Now, next month is in popular streaming culture. Next month is September. So we have been preparing and are going to be launching a couple of new features coming up in September. So be on the lookout for those. Those will be mentioned on all of the channels and on the social media. So you'll find that on the YouTube channel, on the Twitch channel, and on the other places where you follow us on social media. All right, well, I don't see any additional questions from the chat room at this time, so I am going to go ahead and sign off the way I always do by reminding you to watch out for the monsters under the bed. Good night, everybody. Hope you have a great week, and we will talk to you next time on Monster Monday.